Hello and welcome to PM Express, and as you can see, I'm sat in the gardens of the IEA compound. And why am I here? You see, I think gradually we are grasping the concept that no one will save us unless we save ourselves. Indeed, all these philanthropists or grant or aid givers, they probably don't have 100% of Ghana at heart, as we would. And so now the policies and the forums are being set up by our own to think of our own to find a solution. Today we're looking at the strategic development on energy and how we move forward from here. And there was a beautiful forum which was today chaired by Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who's also the Honorable Member of Parliament for Peru East. He's also a member of the Select Committee on Mines and Energy. Very insightful contributions today. Also on the panel was Ishmael Ejekumhene, who's the director of Kumasi Institute of Technology, Energy and Environment. Fantastic submissions. So we caught up with them to have a discussion further as we do on PM Express. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And that's what we are talking about. Just find out the energy in Ghana, the truth about it. Not through any political lens, not who did it or who didn't do it, but just the truth about it. If I do a proper introduction from my extreme left would be Mr. Ishmael Ejekumhene. Ejekumhene. Oh, good, Ejekumhene. Good. And then Dr. Kwabena Donkor to my immediate left. And I'll start with Doctor. I'll start with you. Doc, funny enough, my first question I put here was your last question you ended up with. So I'll throw it back to you. What do we need power for? Because everybody says industry, industry, industry. But admittedly today, if I were to go to any foreign land and somebody walked to me and says, "Oh, Nana, what industry do you have in Ghana?" I wouldn't know what to tell them, whether it's a shoe industry, automobile industry, chemical. I wouldn't know what to tell them. So what do we need power for?
Well, thank you. We need power for a number of activities and for a number of reasons. Like you said, for me, the number one priority is for industry. Industry is powered by electricity. We have said, and I've been an advocate for value addition. Historically, as a country, we were set up to service a particular cosmopolitan or a particular metropolis. There's a definitive colonial arrangement that put us in a particular position to supply raw materials to the metropolis, of the then British Empire. So our economy is a deliberate construct. To break away from that construct, which we must do, and we no longer have an excuse after 57 years of independence to say we are constricted by that construct. To break away from that, we must begin to process our raw materials. And in processing raw materials to finished goods or to manufacturers, you're going to need a lot of power. A good example is that as of today, we sit on nearly 2 billion tons of iron ore.
That's significant.
Very significant. That alone, properly utilized, can turn this country around. Because if we process this iron ore into an iron and steel industry, with its multiply effect and with its downstream applications, we will expand significantly our industrial base. That is not all. We also sit on 700 million tons of bauxite at just two sites, Ninahi in Ashanti and Chebe in the eastern region. If we were to process this bauxite into alumina and then feed Valco, for Valco to produce the necessary ingots for our downstream sector, canning, engine blocks, roofing sheets, name them, will expand our industrial sector. And my obsession with industry is not just the addition to GDP, but job creation, the employment opportunities industry provide. And for me, this must be the most important reason why we need power. Of course, we need our animal comforts. We want to sleep in our air-conditioned rooms or with our fans twirling, and then our ladies cooking with electric cookers, electric stoves, and all the other things. Yeah, we need them. We also need light for illumination. But for me, the critical thing is industry and manufacturing. And that is why we cannot and must not accept the present reality.
Doc, let me stay with you. You see, the submission you've made is excellent. I mean, if I were to mark it, I'd say excellent. However, as a national agenda of it, that wave is not there. So that if I went to Bantama today, or if I went to Peru and I called somebody and said, look, you know, we need more energy. What do you think the nation wants it for? They probably think, yeah, I just want to turn on my lights in the room. We all don't buy into the idea that, look, let's go into industry so that our lives get better at the end. I mean, it's not being sold or preached down to us.
Yes, that is true, but that is not, I'm not worried about that. In that, leadership is not always about democracy, but the majority are not always right. In more cases than not, the majority is not even right. Particularly with the paucity of knowledge and information that we have in our body politic. I believe the average Ghanaian is very intelligent and can make the right decisions. But you make decisions based on information, based on knowledge. So in the absence of that, and all through the world, you are never going to convince everybody before you engage in an activity. And that is what we have leadership. Leadership is to provide direction and vision. It takes a few people to start, and it takes the media to project the vision or the ideas. And I believe this is a good start.
Ishmael, to attain the sort of industrialization that Doctor is talking about, it's not 5,000 megawatts. And so miraculously, even if we get to 5,000 megawatts in 2016, which is being promised, you still won't even touch where we are. I mean, what do we do to get, you know, proper energy that you industrialize with as a nation? What do we do?
Well, no, it's a question of determining what we want to do as a people. And in terms of getting the requisite energy resources to underpin the kind of industrialization Doug is talking about, the technologies are there. The world is replete with so many technologies. Most of them are very mature technologies, and we know how long it's going to take for us to bring every type of energy intervention on stream. The lead times are all known and stuff like that. What we don't have, it's that strategic direction as a people that says that, okay, like Nkrumah said, we want to industrialize this country over 7 years. Okay, what do we need? Let's bring Akosombo. What do we need? Let's bring a very big 1,000 megawatt power plant. And how do we do it? Let's look for the least cost. Let's look for the one that is cleaner. Let's try and make sure that we have the requisite. Because talking about those heavy industries, aluminium and the iron ore industry, they are very energy intensive. I mean, Balco alone, if Balco is running all the 6 port lines, about 300 megawatts.
Wow.
So Balco alone is like taking 450 megawatts, yes. So it's more than
the whole of Danzuma.
Yes, and the whole of maybe the 2 thermal plants in Takoradi, Abuadze. So we're talking about, so if you have 2 of Balcos, it tells you the kind of power requirement that we need. But it's all about agreeing as a people that collectively this is where we want to go. And we want to maybe hit, let's say, a certain level of industrialization by 2030, 2050, and working towards that. We are almost at the rock bottom of the valley that we need to start climbing up. If we don't do things differently and we continue this trajectory, we're not going to make any. And we can have all these fantastic ideas. I tell you, if we bring out all the plans that we have in the ministries, even in the Energy Commission, the Strategic National Energy Plan, that was first started the development started way back in 2000, and finally the drafts and the final version came out 2006. Look, all the sectors of the economy, including the industrial sector, there are plans and projections as to how much power we need to grow from one level to another. We've shelved all of that. So we need to start taking the actions we ought to have taken 20, 30 years ago now, so that we don't regret another 10 years, 15 years down the line that we ought to have done certain things that we didn't do.
Ishmael, let me stay with you because, should we start training students towards the preparation of these sort of things? Because indeed, when these power or if this revolution stands, you need technical people to be able to support it. Otherwise, you go back to the same place where you bring the technology and then you have to import the brains from elsewhere to come and work on it. Should we start, changing school curriculums and encouraging people that, listen, start doing energy, start doing dams and plants and whatever it takes?
Not necessarily, Nana. Ghana is one of the few countries where we don't lack human resource. We live in a country where we have an association of unemployed graduates. KNUST churns out averagely 500, if I'm not exaggerating, about 500 different kinds of engineers every year. Okay, we have every engineering degree program in the world. We run it at KNUST. Now Legon runs some form of engineering courses, UDS. So if mechanical engineering alone, if they churn out 100 mechanical engineering students, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, we have the brain power. There are a lot of people, the polytechnics are also training this technical. So the reason why we don't seem to have the capacity and the human resources that after their training, they don't even have the opportunity to put their skill set into practice. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you have all the same people who read electrical engineering going into other industries elsewhere and doing very, very well. The same training. So we need to have the industry in place so that even through the training programs and even before they come out, these people would have had practical, hands-on training in addition to the books. And in terms of human resources, I do not think that we lack the capacity to support the kind of industrialization drive that we're looking at. We only have to, again, plan and even know how many engineers we need, how many we will need to be able to achieve this goal. And then we'll be able, the investors are going to be able to produce them for us. We do have already enough in the system who are unemployed. And there are quite a number of them who are outside this country who would love to come back and work if there were to be jobs in this country.
Doc, and it has been said 1,000 times, our situation, was predicted before we got here. At what point did we develop this culture that we should get energy and we should, pay the least? Where did we develop that culture from as a people, that we should pay the cheapest possible for energy?
It's historical. If you take hydro is the cheapest form of generation. So we were bred on hydro. Mm-hmm. At the time Akosombo Dam was constructed, our population was less than 8 million. And we could consume less than 30% of installed capacity. You're consuming very little from the cheapest source of generation.
Plus reserves.
In fact, we exported and still had so much reserves. And therefore, the real cost was very low. Unfortunately, as at last year, 2013, the briefing we received in Parliament is that we nearly split 50-50 in terms of generation between hydro and thermal. And for the greater part of the year, gas was not available for thermal. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we were using expensive light crude oil.
The numbers are huge.
The numbers are huge. Having been brought out on low-cost power. Look, I lived in Côte d'Ivoire for some months, and the average person in Côte d'Ivoire will probably just have 1 or 2 bulbs in the room, a small radio, a small refrigerator, because power there is relatively expensive. But we had it so cheap, and you go to Nima and some people who claim they are poor, some people who even claim they are unemployed, they use air conditioners. And these are old, rickety air conditioners that even consume far more power. So we have a taste, a lifestyle that is not commensurate with our pocket. So those are the origins. Unfortunately for us as a people, we have exhausted all our major hydro potential. What we have left are mini dams and small dams. Bui, for example, which is only a peaking plant, is about 3 to 4 times more expensive than Akosombo. So, and Bui is the last of the major hydro sources. So if we do these small ones, what we're going to have going forward is very expensive hydro. And they will only make sense, and I'm all for them, but they give us small capacity, maximum 100, 60, 80. And for them to be even economically viable, we have to integrate them into agriculture. Mm-hmm. So we have exhausted our major hydro sources. So going forward, and yet the 5,000 megawatts for me is inadequate. We should be thinking of having minimum 10,000 megawatts in the next 10 years, minimum.
Doc, I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, we'll look at the 10,000 megawatts and also this gas that's coming from the Jubilee fields. There's one school of thought that says it's not enough even if we get all of it, and we are not going to get all of it. Yet we still hear the news that, as soon as that gas comes, tariffs are even going to go lower, which is the truth. Stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back to this very, very important discussion, energy. How can a country grow without energy? Anything you do in there, as far as growth and industry is concerned, this is it. But our hopes are on that gas, Doctor, is going to come from Jubilee Fields. And the minister was on Good Evening Ghana saying that when the gas comes, tariffs was going to go lower. In fact, Paul Adumochiri asked categorically, he said yes, when the gas comes on board, tariffs are coming down. What's the truth about the gas?
Well, it is not my style to contradict the executive. Mm-hmm. He may have more facts than I have. However, what I know is that if you take all the installed capacity, even in the Abuazi corridor, the Jubilee gas will not be enough to fuel when we are operating at maximum installed capacity. Meanwhile, additions are being made. Mm-hmm. So the Jubilee gas will ameliorate the situation, but it is not the solution. It will reduce our dependence on imported light crude oil. And therefore, there will be some fuel savings for VRA. Whether VRA will be able to break even and make a profit, and VRA must make profit in order to reinvest. Mm-hmm. It's even another issue. I haven't run the models yet. So it will be unwise to reduce tariffs on the basis of the Jubilee gas, particularly when we have underinvested. Should there be gains from the use of Jubilee gas, I would prefer those gains being pushed into investment, into new equipment, into new generation, and then especially into systems. Yes, we lambast ECG for its inefficiencies, and sometimes they deserve to. However, ECG has serious challenges with equipment. When you're operating obsolete equipment, technical losses will increase. You cannot avoid technical losses once you are transmitting power over distances, but you can minimize them. And so there are acceptable standards, industry acceptable standards all over the world. So should there be any gain from Jubilee, the use of Jubilee gas rather than expensive light crude oil? That should go into investment in the sector. We have so underinvested historically that we need to double, if not triple, what we invest into the sector today.
So obviously you don't agree that if we are paying a certain amount and Jubilee Fields coming, we should scoop the profit and reinvest it.
We have to reinvest. And let me also throw in this caution. We are often in a hurry, probably because of the pressure on us to prescribe solutions which are not holistic. Remember, when we ran into this problem, the perception was that once the West African gas pipeline is repaired, the situation, because it is not just one factor contributing to the mess. There are a myriad of factors. And therefore, yes, if you solve one, you get some breathing space. But it is not the total solution.
Ishmael, do you find that information to the general public is sometimes half-hearted? Because, sometimes you hear the hard truth and you think, really, has this been the case all the time? And how come the general public don't know? I don't know if you get the same thing, because like today, there were some of the issues were quite revealing.
Yeah, I mean, for us in the organization I worked for, KITE, when we discovered oil as a country, we set out to minimize expectations. So we were involved in a number of projects, not just even, we hadn't looked at the power side because at the time we didn't even know what we were going to do with the gas. So we started telling Ghanaians, look, don't expect too much from the oil, and it's the reality is hitting home for all of us to see. And in my same way, a couple of months back, we held a meeting at the College of Surgeons and Physicians. And this was one of the things that we said as part of the findings of one of the projects that we're involved in. Essentially, we've overhyped the likely impact of the Jubilee gas. And instead of telling Ghanaians the fact that, look, it's not going to change the situation overnight, because the gas that is coming from Jubilee is basically going to replace the light crude oil that is running the thermal plants in Abuadze. Mm-hmm. So and there wouldn't be enough to even fuel any additional plants. So if it's 550, the capacity is not going to change. What is going to change perhaps will be the reliability of supply and also the unit cost of generation. Mm-hmm. That's going to make a difference. As to what happens in terms of the savings and all that, I believe the system, there are a lot of shortfalls in the system that it wouldn't even be able to leak out of the system. Money is needed everywhere in the system. But that's the thing. The politicians will have to tell Ghanaians the truth. And I'm not saying this because of anything. What I'm saying is that let us be factual. Let us tell people what they can realistically and reasonably expect, so that they wouldn't come back and say, but he promised that things were going to change. It's just the same way when PURC are increasing tariffs. I've said on several platforms, they shouldn't create the impression that the tariffs that are being given are supposed to go to improve service quality, because they know that the tariffs that have been approved cannot improve service quality because there is no investment component built into it. Okay, so when you create the impression, then I'm right to demand that, look, I didn't see any improvement. Besides, the tariffs are cedi denominated. And you even consider the major increases in October last year. And look at the level of depreciation of the currency. That's the real value today. So and mind you, the investments are in dollars. The crude oil, nobody accepts cedis. So that's the challenge. And all the state institutions should tell the truth, or not the truth, tell us what the facts are, so that we know and we don't demand too much from ECG. Everybody's blaming ECG because you got tariff increases. But I've always questioned why ECG will be, or VRA will be asking for 200% increments. And then PRC say we can only give you 79%. Okay, there must be some confusion somewhere. Either the utilities don't know how to calculate their this thing, or PRC is saying that you are worth this much, but we can't give that to you. And that's the problem that we have. PRC is always complaining that there's this regulatory capture and interference. No, there's supposed to be an independent body. You tell us what the true cost is. Let the government tell Ghanaians, well, we wash our hands. This is what it takes to run an efficient power system. If you are quiet and you are forced to reduce tariffs and things like that, you can't come and blame anybody. So we need to manage expectations. We need to be factual, and we need to let people know what they can reasonably expect with every policy decision that we take in this country.
Now let me even come in. Sometimes the fault in terms of information flow or the misinformation is not even from the politicians. Sometimes it comes from the technocrats. Let me give you a good example. When Bui Dam was being constructed, they kept on from Kufuor's government to Atama's government to John Mahama's government. They kept on telling us that it will add 400 megawatts to generation, to add 400 megawatts. When a few of us cautioned them, they didn't stop, because they often write the speeches for the politicians and they go and read. Bui's 400 megawatts is just about Pond's 160, because Bui was designed as a peaking plant. So the 400, assuming it's available, will only kick in from 6 p.m. during peak to 11. So you can't run Bui on what we call base load. It can't do 24 hours. So the 400 comes in just for a short period, and that is all that is available. If you run it like you run corn, we will run out in about 3 months. And yet they kept on telling the country, 400 megawatts will be added to it, as if it is 400 base load.
So that's the truth, because, I mean, when the plants has been run beyond what it was designed for, now they have very, very, very low water volumes in the lake. And in fact, in actual fact, we should have even waited a bit longer after the impoundment for the lake to have built up. But we were in a crisis situation. So now we've actually depleted the water in Bui, because it was being run for other purposes than it had been designed. Peaking plant that comes in, kicks in when...
So Bui is just a standby generator?
In a way, because it was only coming in the evening.
In the evening, during the peak. Yeah, that was what it was designed for. Yeah. And yet the information and the media, unfortunately, and I tend to blame the media.
400 is maximum generation capacity.
Yes, when water is available, and provided we run it only during peak. Yeah. So currently, we can't, even during peak, we can't do the 400 because we have overdrawn on the water.
Now we don't have water in the lake.
And sometimes I think the media also does this country a disservice. We just take everything superficially. We don't specialize, we don't ask critical questions. And let me tell you, for most politicians, if you don't ask the critical questions, they won't volunteer. Not just politicians, anybody exercising power, be they our traditional rulers, be they our pastors, be they media owners. If you don't ask the critical questions, they won't volunteer. Let me quickly throw in this question that probably, must we use all of our gas for power as an agrarian country? That has been one of my fights. 60% of our people depend on agriculture for a livelihood. We are one of the least fertilizer-intensive countries in the world. And therefore, our productivity per acre is one of the lowest. Gas also serves as feedstock for fertilizer production. Assuming we dedicated the cheapest type of gas we have, the associated gas, to fertilizer production, and then we were able to produce enough fertilizer, and we're able to apply enough fertilizer coupled with modern agronomy practices, we will double, if not triple, productivity per acre in this country and bring a lot more people out of poverty. So there is also a policy debate that as a people we have to determine. We need a gas use policy. Today everybody will religiously say power, but is that the best use for associated? These are issues that I expect that the media, questions the media should be asking, so that we have a debate as a people. What will bring more people out of poverty?
Doc, with the current energy we have now, obviously energy is long term. Whatever money we put in today, we're not going to see it until then. Are we able to switch the culture where industry now pays less and the domestic consumer pays more, so at least the little industry that is there today can at least survive? Because I think it's too expensive to run.
We must. Like we've said, in every civilized jurisdiction, consumer customers, that is domestic UMI, we pay more than industrial customers because it's more expensive to bring us power than to industry, because of the quantum of power involved. Secondly, if you had a choice between having a job and sleeping in darkness and having light and not having a job, what would the average person go for? You see, we must begin to think strategically, have our priorities right. What is the priority? Keep industry going, keep manufacturing going, have jobs so that the people can fend for themselves. And I am an advocate for also segmenting our generation mix. What stops us from dedicating the cheapest source of generation, which is hydro, to critical industries, strategic industries? That is what is done in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I mean, nobody uses thermal to run maybe a smelter. It will be outrageously unaffordable. Okay, but that's the real challenge, and I mean, I'm sure I touched on that. That tariff arrangement will have to be restructured. And it's not just industry, but also another category of consumers called the non-residential consumers. They are the people like the hairdressers or somebody who just want to run a small shop and has a refrigerator in there. Look, their tariffs are also killing. Meanwhile, when we started this rural electrification or electrification drive, productive uses of electricity was one of the major objectives. So, for example, a farmer who wants to use electricity to irrigate his farm pays more, sometimes twice, 3 times the amount that you and I pay as residential consumers. That's not fair. So productivity will continue to go down because I have no incentive to invest. And if I'm not able to sell or I'm not able to make enough profit, there's no way I'm going to mechanize my farming processes because it's way too expensive. Meanwhile, yes, admittedly, we can deal with affordability issues as far as the residential sector is concerned. I'm not saying that everybody can pay. I mean, but what I'm saying is that let's face the fact, let's restructure the thing and figure out how the residential sector is going to be taken care of. Nowhere in the world do you have the industrial sector subsidizing the residential sector. And that has to change. Otherwise, it becomes a disincentive for you to invest your money because at the end of the day, you wouldn't be able to even meet your operational costs, let alone think about profit.
Because now that the whole universe is now globalized and a shoe factory in Kumasi is competing with a shoe factory in Hong Kong, you definitely need a cheaper way of producing. So we have to rethink this issue. But Doc, do we have another culture where energy is really sensitive when you are going to get into power? And so it becomes very difficult for politicians to mount a platform and not promise the crowd that, listen, you give me power, you give me the autonomy, and I will give you cheap energy. And that also becomes a cancer for us.
Yes, I have stated elsewhere, and I did indeed even state it today, that it is high time we elevated the issues of energy, both power and petroleum, above partisanship. Other countries have done it. Norway is a good example. In Norway, they say oil and gas is above any party. A party may have 75%, may control 75% of the system. They cannot change laws. You will need consensus, even from the smallest of parties. Because unfortunately for us, on one hand, unfortunately for us, both two major parties have lost and won elections on the basis of pricing, petroleum pricing. And so at least the scores are 1-1. So we should both sit back. But no, we should not leave it to the issues of energy are too important to leave it to politicians alone. As a nation, we should begin to say that, look, the issues of energy, whether it is party A or party B, the issues are the same. So let's put the party colors aside, and then as a collective, let's look at how we will deal with these issues so that it becomes unattractive to use energy issues for political electioneering. And the media can play a major role, because if you come and promise today, we say, look, you promised this last week. That party also promised that last week. So please, let's put that aside. How will you help resolve these issues?
I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, I want to find out what is our current situation. Is it really that bad, or it's lukewarm and that we just need to work out on it? What situation are we in now? Stay tuned. Well, welcome back on the interesting subject of energy, and I'll go straight to Ishmael and find out. Ishmael, what, as far as, are we in a crisis, or are we not there yet? What is that situation now? Is there a cause for alarm?
Yes, Nana, we are in deep crisis, and the reason why we are in deep crisis is that the problems that we have cannot be fixed within a short time. When you consistently have if you don't have the required reserve margin, what it means is that any little imbalance in the system creates a lot of confusion. And because some of our plants are also aging, for example, the thermal plants were built close to like 20 years ago. In terms of the maintenance, it takes a longer time, which we shut it down and all of that. So we are in a crisis in the sense that even though we have enough installed capacity, the available capacity to meet the peak demand is not up to what we need. So at every point in time, the plants that are able to deliver energy into the network, they are shorter than, fewer than what we need. So for example, I mean, I saw some of the data. Last Friday, for example, about 320 megawatts of loads were shared. And most of the units in Takoradi were down. Asogli obviously is down because the gas is, I mean, fortunately Asogli, there was, if you check the data, there was enough gas last week, so Asogli was delivering. But the bottom line is that ECG they were authorized to share up to 320 megawatts last Friday. And those daily reports are there. So we are in a crisis in the sense that we have a generation problem, not to talk about the distribution side. So we don't have to run away from the problem. We have to tell the truth. I mean, VRA has been doing well in the sense that they keep telling us that we are not out of the crisis yet, not until we have sufficient reserve margin that allows us to, for example, take Takoradi off and take our time and fix it without destabilizing the thing. Now, even when you go down, you are struggling to ration and trying to get back as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, you might not be able to fix the problem well. So within the shortest possible time, you're going back. We are in a crisis in the sense that we've overdrawn on Bui, for example, which was supposed to come in as really. And we are in a crisis. So yes,
Ishmael,
we don't have to run away from.
Can we have a system where industrialized area will be excluded from the shedding so that, you know, even if you knock down Accra, maybe Tema is working, industrial area is working, where the heavy industries are, we don't punish them too much, if I may say?
In a way, they do that.
Okay.
They do that, and if you talk to the ECG people, they take those into consideration.
Okay.
The problem is that in our zoning, there's a problem with our zoning.
So
you have some industries right in the midst of a residential unit. So what do you do? So yes, I know they take that into account, and sometimes they try as much as possible during the daytime. They leave the industries to work and then try and see if they can balance the loads and things like that. Fortunately for Tema, they have Enclave Power, which is another distribution company that serves where the real heart of industries are. So in that case, they're able to dedicate some power to Enclave Power so long as their business is ready to run. But the problem is with those industries that are situated and residing with us in our neighborhoods. So, but they try to do that. But the real bottom line is that when you don't have a reliable supply, I know production units that would rather start their production processes with the standby generator because they don't want to lose batches that they put in the system, because an outage for even 5 minutes destroys everything. I know hospitals that will never do surgeries using the grid because they can't trust it. So the moment you hear the generators running when you have power, it means they are doing surgery. So that's the true cost of some of the things that we are, because you don't want to start your production process, the whole batch is in the process.
Melt your chocolate and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah, so it's a crisis situation.
Doctor, so what is the short-term situation or solution for us?
Well, in the short term, we'll have to look at both supply side and demand side. Conservation. Conservation and conservation. Look, we establish an energy foundation during one of the crises we went through in the past. You hardly hear of energy foundation. We need to conserve power. We are so inefficient in our power use. Absolutely inefficient.
As soon as he's home, the lights should be on. Whether he's in that
all
room
the
or
lights must be on. For example, in my home, all deep freezers are switched off at night. It's a standing instruction. Simply because there is no additional benefit leaving your deep freezer on at night. You are not opening it. It's already frozen.
That's very important, isn't it?
Yes. It's already
that's
frozen.
A very important.
And you,
I haven't
during the
thought of it
day
like that.
you will be opening and closing, but during the night, you don't hardly ever open a deep freezer at night. So if you switch it off and switch it on, and the deep freezer consumes so much in the average household, at least 20 to 25% of consumption can be attributed to deep freezers. And then ironing.
Yeah. In fact,
so
Doc, just to add to what Doc is saying, the wastage in the system is so huge that, I mean, fortunately for us, we did a good job with lighting. So the lighting we've managed to ban incandescents. So at least even if you have too many bulbs on, in terms of it does a whole lot of difference. But what we still haven't dealt with is refrigeration, which is now has the highest consumption as far as domestic loads are concerned. So as we talked about today, if we all should agree to turn off our refrigerators in the night or during the peak hours. You see, the thing about energy efficiency is that it makes economic sense as well, because it affects your end user tariff. And you pay less at the end of the day. You make the right investments and it pays back, because you can install energy efficient appliances. You can go in and buy a refrigerator, and a more energy efficient refrigerator, and the appliance will pay for itself over the period of time. So the Energy Commission, for example, has a refrigeration rebate program where you turn in your old refrigerator and then you're given a new one, you pay the difference. And you have a loan facility from EcoBank to be able to do that. I think we should all go in and do that and make sure that we are conserving, and that's the cheapest option for us in this crisis situation. The short term, because all the others you need about the lead time is between 24 and sometimes 36 months to bring in online a new power plant.
And even in our industries, power factor correction. Energy Commission did a pilot, and one of them, an industry saved as much as 1/3 of its power.
That's a whole
by just installing capacitor banks. And he talked about Energy Foundation. Unfortunately, Energy Foundation is on its knees now, because most of their functions have been taken over by the Energy Commission. So it's up to the Energy Commission to continue that course. But the foundation still exists, but it doesn't have the resources to be doing what they were doing.
I mean, I can see education coming into play, like intensive education.
A lot.
And who spearheads? I mean, I know media, probably,
two institutions, the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum and the Energy Commission, they must have primary responsibility for education, especially conservation in these times. We are in a crisis, no matter how you describe it. Part of the crisis arises out of financing. inadequate financing, underinvestment over a number of years. And then we also have capacity challenges, generation challenges. We are nowhere near the generation we need to have, let alone have a reserve or redundancy, as we call it in the industry.
So while you're saying that, I mean, at the moment, one of the contribution that came was that if you power with crude, they can produce at 21 cents per kilowatt hour, and I think PRC said we should buy it at 14 per kilowatt hour.
It's not even 14 cents.
It's a little bit dicey when it comes, because you see, it's what we have is
weighted
a mix.
Average.
It's a weighted average.
Yeah.
And you see, they have their minds on the fact that they still have hydro, which is 2.5. So that's where the disagreement they are always coming from. So they use a weighted average and say that this is the 14 cents. So you put everything in one basket and then
you should balance it.
Yes, but the truth of the matter is, as Doctor is saying, we have to take a strategic decision as to what we want to do with the hydro. If we were to take the hydro out of the equation and price the rest, and then figure out if we have a social, and if we want to give it to industry, and then figure out how we'll be able to, for example, one problem that we had with VALCO is the fact that VALCO still wanted to get the power at 3 cents. Okay, and it's understandable, because without that kind of price range, you can't do the smelters, you can't pay. Okay, but the question now is, do we even have the resources as a country to be able to afford that? So we are interested in industrialization, but we'd rather keep the dollars that we're going to use to import the crude than allow VALCO to run. And then we do the math and say the VALCO is employing only about 600 people, let them go home. Okay, so that's the real bottom line. It's true that we need to pay cost-reflective tariff, but PURC need to be, in its pricing, there has to be some transparency, and it has to be clear what the true cost is, so that there's little disagreement between the utilities and
what the policy direction is. Without VALCO, there could never have been an Akosombo Dam in the first place.
Exactly.
They were the off-taker that guaranteed the dam. And therefore, VALCO should pay, I believe VALCO should pay at a price that covers the cost of generation at Akosombo plus a margin in transmission. So I would accept a 4 cents, because Akosombo will generate about 2.5 cents. So we cannot treat VALCO, and VALCO it's not just about the 600 people, the downstream. All the alu works, in the absence of VALCO producing, they are importing ingots, putting pressure on the currency and all the other things. That is the challenge. So that is the challenge of VALCO.
We could get VALCO efficient and then export, and it probably makes them more money to put back into energy.
But VALCO standing alone will not do the trick. But it is important we have VALCO. Without VALCO, we won't have an alumina plant. We need the whole integrated chain. We need to put the alumina plant in, because if you export bauxite, raw bauxite, you are not going to earn more than $40 per ton. If you process the same ton into alumina, you are earning between 400 to 500. And then if you process the alumina, the same equivalent ton, into ingot, you are over 2,000. And ingot also then serves as a raw material for the downstream canning industry, for vehicle engine blocks, roofing sheets. So we should stop looking at things as individual entities and look at the whole value chain and use that as the basis of our analysis.
But Ishmael, you keep touching on something which makes me panic a bit, in terms of we are thinking of increasing energy, but the energy we are thinking of is too expensive, to the extent that even if you have industry, they probably wouldn't want that type of energy.
It has to. I mean, I don't think it's too expensive, because what we are pushing in those countries is no different from what others have pushed elsewhere, and their industries have survived. It's the totality of the policy package that we have, and how we are strategically positioning the industrial sector to be able to get all the resources and all the input they need to be profitable and stay competitive. So it's yes, we've exhausted the cheaper options and we need to be looking at slightly more expensive options. But with proper planning, we'll be able to look at what we call integrated resource planning. That puts all the options on the table, and we'll go in for least cost option at a point, and the dispatch will be as and when needed.
Let me bring Doc in here before I run out of time. Doc, we're sitting here and we're mourning and everything, but we are number 2 sub-Saharan Africa. So, I mean, do we sit down, cross our legs and say, well, after all, it's not too bad?
We are not competing with sub-Saharan Africa.
Exactly.
We are competing with the big boys. Why must Ghana, with our natural endowment, why must we be competing with sub-Saharan Africa? We are the black star of Africa. We should be the leader, and then the growth pole theory drag the rest of Africa along.
Yeah.
For me, that is Ghana's natural leadership position in Africa. Look, we are the center of the world. We are the only country I know with both longitude 0 degrees and latitude 0 degrees passing through our space. So that makes us the center of the world. So we should be a center of excellence to pull. We are the black star of Africa, for heaven's sake.
And now we keep comparing ourselves. When you don't set yourself lofty targets and you compare yourself with the Benins and the Togos, we will remain where we are.
I think I like the passion that, if God has placed you at the center and given you everything, you have no excuse but to excel. And I want to say thank you very much to my esteemed guests today. And as I say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Thanks for watching.